Hello everyone, my name is Ravi Singh. I am the owner of the XUV 700 parked over here. I've actually tried to drive the car in zip mode within the city during the peak summers in Delhi. I wanted to get a little more mileage out of the car when I was driving in city, so I was trying the city mode or the zip mode of the car. I think the zip is only in the name, it's not so zippy. Even if you completely press the accelerator, the performance doesn't come out, the acceleration doesn't come out when you're expecting the car to perform. The pickup is very less and I don't like the car. I don't like the dynamics of the car, how it performs in a zip mode, even within the city. So honestly, maybe it's because of the Delhi-Gurgaon traffic where the average speed is a little higher and I'm used to better acceleration. So I don't like the zip mode at all. I have rarely driven it in zip mode. Whereas in the zap mode, which is the most used mode in the XUV 700, that mode is more comfortable. It is very well balanced. There is a good balance of power. There is a good balance of acceleration on it. Zoom mode is definitely much more powerful. Their engine dynamics change drastically. The acceleration improves a lot. The braking becomes much more sharper. So I love the zoom mode, especially if I'm driving on the highways. From a power perspective, I believe the car is rated at 185 bhp of power. 185 bhp of power gets delivered when the car is running in zoom mode. I've been told that in zap mode, the performance is equivalent to an XUV 500, which is about 154, 155 bhp rated power of the engine. City drive, I think the car is very comfortable to drive in the city. I think one of the core reasons for that is the steering response. The steering is really light. I wanted to take an unbiased opinion, so I gave the car to one of my friends to drive, and he had never driven an SUV before. Even he was feeling that he drives a Verna, and he's more of a sedan kind of a guy. But after driving this car, he was very much happy as a driver that he felt that it would be very difficult to maneuver the car, very difficult to drive the car around. I mean, the car is very easily maneuverable in the city, and when I couple that with the ADAS system in the cities, particularly in a stop and go traffic, it becomes much more comfortable. From a driving perspective, I don't feel much of a difference on the car. In fact, the steering is just too light. I believe the electronic power steering has a very major role to play when it comes to the driving dynamics. The steering is really light and I'm able to maneuver the car very comfortably, even better than what I used to do with the XUV 500. I think from a city driving perspective, one of the key features that I really enjoy is engaging the cruise control. So especially when I'm driving on NH8 and entering Delhi, that's where the majority of traffic happens. When I engage the adaptive cruise control in the car, in the city, I think it is much more comfortable, especially when I'm driving on NH8 kind of a traffic. So NH8 traffic is much more lane specific. People don't really cut across in the lanes. Within the city, if I engage the adaptive cruise control, I think it engages as low as 30 kmph. And in a stop and go traffic, it is much more comfortable, especially when you're stuck in a traffic jam for more than half an hour, and which is now happening very often because most people have started going to offices, and I keep traveling to Noida from Gurgaon. So in a stop and go traffic, I think the adaptive cruise control is a boon. The only challenge that I have there is, the minimum distance that it keeps between the cars is a 1 car distance. I can change that. So basically I can change it from 3 cars to a 1 car. But even in a 1 car kind of a gap, there is a habit that people try to get in wherever they see a gap. The motorcycle guys, the auto guys, or even sometimes the wagon cab drivers. So you never get a 1 car distance. And the moment the car senses that there is some other car coming in the lane, the entire lane stops. The emergency braking gets applied and the car is stopped in the middle of a highway. So yeah, I mean that is sometimes a nuisance. So you can't really disengage from driving. You have to always be active. You'll always have to keep a track of how the traffic is moving. But then in a stop and go traffic, if you just engage the car when you're driving at about 5 to 6 kmph also, the adaptive cruise control gets engaged, and that is very helpful. I have used it many times in the traffic, and it is helpful. The ride quality is a bit stiff, so if you really accelerate the car, it performs well even on potholes because the suspension on the 700 is much more stiffer than the 500. So the vertical movement is reduced, and that is why the highway drives are much more better. But within the city, I feel the stiff suspension doesn't really do the job because there are, in Gurgaon, the roads are really bad these days. Mainly could be because of the rains. Driving around in these potholed or even uneven roads coupled with a stiff suspension is not really a very nice experience because you feel that the car is not wanting to go over those rough patches. But yeah, I mean the same road, if I'm driving at a higher speed, maybe beyond 70 kilometers per hour on a highway run, then I'm much more comfortable, that I'm much more confident on the car and the car performs really well. The comfortable place for the car is on the highway. I think highway drives are something that I really enjoy in the car. From inside, the car is really silent since the suspension is quite stiff. On highway runs, in fact, I'll tell you one of the experiences when I was driving to Agra for the first time from Gurgaon. I normally start really early in the mornings when the traffic is really sparse, say around 4 o'clock in the morning. I reached Agra in about 2 hours and 45 minutes. That was very, surprising for me as well, because I was not overspeeding. I was driving well within the specified traffic limits, speed limit. I think the maximum speed that I touched during that drive was about 110 kmph, because I think that is another safety aspect that has been built into the car, that the moment you cross 120, the car throws an overspeeding error, and that error is so annoying that you want to get the car down below 120 kmph. It happens when you're on a highway drive and you're not engaging a cruise control. You tend to speed up because the car is really silent and the acceleration is so good that you tend to attain speeds which you're not supposed to. But then yes, that sort of a warning slows you down. You are driving between the the speeds between 100 to 110 kmph. And that is where the car is much more comfortable. I was pleasantly surprised with the kind of time that I did for while reaching Agra. Because the car is new, I also wanted to explore the maximum power of the car. So if you engage the zoom mode, the acceleration and overtaking freely feels like a breeze. It performs like a car there. It doesn't really feel like you're driving a bulky SUV. In terms of confidence that it inspires while you overtaking a vehicle is much more higher as compared to maybe the earlier XUV 500 that I was having. So I think on a highway, I'm much more comfortable in the car. In terms of driving, I really like the way the car performs. Even in emergency situations, I like the brake bite. I like the way I feel in control of the car. The safety features definitely help me a lot. I have tried smart pilot assist. I have tried lane keep assist as well, and those features are very helpful. I think one feature that I really admire in the car is the driver drowsiness detection. If you keep driving the car for a really long time, so that you'll not notice that kind of the system is intelligent enough to notice that the driver is feeling drowsy, or there is something called as a white line fever, right? When you're driving the car for a really long time on the highway and you lose track of where you are exactly, you just keep driving. So the car engages that, and the drowsiness detection understands that the driver is not fully attentive, and it requests you to stop the car. It's mostly video alerts, and the steering vibrates if it feels that you're in a situation where you're not completely active. So it also sort of wakes you up with a jolt, and it requests the driver to stop the car. If I used to brake my 500, it used to squeal. The brakes used to squeal a lot. Maybe because the quality of the brake pads was really bad in that car. But in this car, I have now not faced an issue so far. The brakes are absolutely silent and they engage as you're expected them to. And I think the ADAS also has to play a very important role there, because if you change the driving modes, if I change it from zoom to a zap mode, the braking becomes zap to a zoom mode, the braking becomes much more sharper. If you're accelerating the car very hard, you expect the stopping distance of the car should also reduce, right? Because if you're driving aggressively, you expect that the car should be in much more control. And I think one of the core aspects of that control is having the right braking power in the car. So let's say if I'm driving at a speed of 100 or 120 kmph, and at that point of time, if something suddenly comes up, then the brake bite has to be sharp enough to ensure that the car stops in the right distance. So I think that is where it improves the brake bite in the car when I engage the zoom mode. Thank you so much, guys. If you like the video, please hit the like button and subscribe. Please let me know about your feedback and any inputs that you would want to give me as a user or as a viewer.